Hello and welcome back to the Be Elite podcast, the show where we dive into deep discussions, explore the unexplored, and occasionally get lost along the way. I'm your host, Ben Allgaier, and I'm going to guide us through uncharted territories of thought and innovation and uncover what makes people truly elite. My guest today is Kenny Garza, a remarkable individual who was raised in Mexico with a family background rich in entrepreneurship. Kenny began his career as a loan officer and then transitioned into real estate investing. Starting with Airbnb arbitrage, he has expanded into land investing and single-family homes. Kenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, brother.
How you doing, man? It's been a while.
It has been a while, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's cool to be doing a podcast at the beginning of the year, kick off in the right direction and right energy and everything. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
How about you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Done with the holidays, ready to get back into the swing of things. So, So yeah, excited for 2024 and what we can all accomplish together. So let's give some people some good stuff today.
Let's do it.
Okay. So raised in Mexico, I read that your family was full of entrepreneurs down in Mexico. Is that right?
Yeah. So we owned a family business for about 40 years in Mexico. So it was a meat market and cold storage units that we would actually rent out on the space. Probably I think it was 5,000 square feet, 5 to 7,500 square feet of cold storage warehouse space. And we had that business for a long time. But just like anything else, there's ebbs and flows. And unfortunately, the business didn't do too hot after 2008. We're doing international trading with meat, as products and by trailers and things like that, and unfortunately didn't go so hot. So, but honestly, man, some of the things that I don't typically talk about much is at 16, my dad passed unexpectedly. Right, so this was back in 2010. No, it's all good, but it ties to the story, right? So in 2008, the business starts going in decline. 1 year later, my grandpa passed. 1 year after that, my dad passed. So it was just literally just back to back, unexpected, honestly, both of them. Right. And so after that happened, my older brother, Roger, and he was 18, I was 16. We had been working in the business since we were 10, right? If anybody that's listening, it has a Hispanic background, they get it. And so, it's a blessing because we were able to kind of keep the family afloat, honestly surviving. We were not thriving by any means, right? We had no money, but, at least we could eat 1 to 2 meals a day and kind of keep things going, right? Yeah. And so after that, my mom was like, this enough. We have no business being here in Mexico anymore. So we moved to the United States. Long story short, we ended up in San Antonio. So I came to the States with no contacts, no money, nothing. First 6 months to a year sleeping on the floor at my aunt's house, just from ground zero. So this was when I was 16, 17. So,
were you did you speak English at that point? You knew how to speak English coming to the country?
Yeah, I did. That's something that I'm so thankful to my parents for. My mom's side of the family, they're white. My dad's side of the family, Mexican, right? So we did come almost every summer to the United States, and we hang out with our cousins, and so we got some exposure. And then also, they made big sacrifices and put us through some great private schools in Monterrey, Mexico. And so, I took 85% of all of my classes were in English, math, history. Nice. All the sciences, basically all the STEMs were in English, and then Spanish, I think, was only government history, government and Spanish, grammar.
Yeah. So you're 16 years old and you're running this company with your brother who's 18.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah, we had at the time, a team of six to eight adult men, right? In their 40s, have been working for my dad for 15 years kind of thing. Wow. And we're, these kids just telling them what to do, running the company. And We didn't know.
That's insane.
Here's the thing, right? We had no idea what we were doing. We were just doing what we were taught to do, right?
Yeah,
But
for sure.
when it came to decision making, we leaned on them honestly for all the big decisions. Like, hey, this customer's upset. What do we do, right? So we would lean on their expertise, and that was it was awesome. Like looking back, it was a really cool experience. You know, obviously my dad passing was not a cool experience, but like everything after that.
But who at 16 years old has the ability to like even has the opportunity to do anything like that? Not many people. Tell you that.
Well, man, if it happens to you, you'll find out if you can do it or not, right? It's kind of one of those things where you just sink or swim, right?
So you pick up, and what age did you move to the United States?
So 16. So we first moved to Katy. That's where my aunt was. Mm-hmm. And my first job was in Kroger as a cashier, right? So I did that. I walked to work mile each way. I mean, it was just crazy to think back on it. Like I can't even like process anymore. But so we were in Houston for about 2 years, and then we were like, man, we don't really like the city. So we ended up in San Antonio. In San Antonio, we lasted for about, so 29, we moved 16, 13 years to 11. So we were in San Antonio for 8 years. And that's where, you know, I was serving tables. I met my fiance, Camille, you know, serving tables at a steakhouse in San Antonio.
There you go.
And you know, that city gave me a lot, right? Like the love of my life, plus the hunger for real estate. It also was born in San Antonio. That's where I met my previous business partner as well. A really good friend of mine. We're still good friends, even after, you know, our business partnership. You know, so I made my way into the corporate world a little bit. It was like a startup. It was a medical firm. And that's where I met my business partner. So him and I were kind of like geeking out on Bigger Pockets and, you know, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And like, we started just like plotting like how we were going to, you know, become
world domination,
independent. Yeah, exactly. And that was while I had a corporate job. So I went from cashier to server to operation. So executive assistant, operation specialist, operation manager. So I lasted 3 years in that company. And then I wanted to get into sales so bad. Like I was like, man, like I belong in sales. I need to be in sales. Like I know that's where you can make, you know, the really good money. Yep. But man, my boss at the time just kept like pumping the brakes on me like every step of the way. And so I was like, man, I got really discouraged, right? Like
for sure.
I probably told him like 6 times, like formally, right? Like in a sit down, like, hey, I really want to do this. This is where I want, you know, and every time, yeah, we'll see. And it never happened. So just like any sensible person would, I quit and I went into a full commission job with no money in the bank,
my goodness,
a credit card in the dream. And I got into mortgage. So my and a little bit of background there. So my fiance's dad has been in mortgage for like 25 years.
Okay.
So we had talked about it a couple of times, and it piqued my interest. And one day, you know, he told me about it. I was like, dude, get me an interview. And he did, got me an interview. I got the job, and I did the mortgage, the LO life for about 3 years as well.
Okay. Well, good deal. Yeah, man. I completely relate to that whole wanting to be a sales type of role, whatever that looks like. I started my corporate job as a sales guy down in Arizona selling medical junk, like laboratory testing. And yeah, I knew that I was built for sales. Just kind of like where we all get to that certain point where we're like, man, the corporate world is just we're not built for it. I'm a horrible employee, and I learned that really fast that I am a terrible employee. Yeah. It's so bad.
Yeah.
So, so you get that corporate, you go through that experience, and then talk about how you go from that. Like we've talked about with multiple people, the idea of burning the boats, right?
Yeah.
Like you burn the boats, you go into the next venture. But personally for me and my business partner, Todd, who you know pretty well, we both kind of talked about how that strategy doesn't work for everybody. Like if you got kids and a family to feed, burning the boats is a terrible idea, right? There's some people that it works for. It worked well for me in how I got to here because I didn't have a family. I had a fallback plan of moving back to Kansas City after I was done with that corporate job. But so explain kind of your mindset on that. And did you burn the boats? Did you kind of just pull out of the corporate thing and go hot and heavy?
Yes, I did. So they did give me like it was basically a draw, right? Like a guarantee for I think for 3 months, for 3 or 6 months. I can't remember. I think it was 3 months. I had a guarantee for 3 months. So X amount of dollars. It wasn't much. I think it was like $2,500 or something. Just basically enough at the time to pay my bills, right? So Camille at the time had a job as well, and so she was kind of supporting me in my journey and us, right? So we decided that it was the right thing for me to do. I mean, and all of these decisions, by the way, I think, I mean, these have always been an us like decision, right? Like we both make these decisions and support each other, which honestly, looking back, is really probably the main reason why I did all those things. Because had I not had the support of my, significant other to take those leaps and risk, I probably wouldn't, right? Like, I would seek comfort and I would seek security and safety for my, now fiance, right?
Yeah.
And so we lived together at the time, right? Like we already had like shared bank accounts, all that, we were basically practically married, like domestic partners, right? If you will. Yeah. So I left. I didn't make any money for the first 4 or 5 months. After the 5th month, I closed my first million in a month in production, which was like $5,000, $5,000 or $6,000. I was like, oh wow, this is possible, right? We can do this. Yeah. And then the 6th month also was like another million. And then I got the bug because I started seeing that the better producing loan officers were in builder desks, right? So essentially what that is that the mortgage company creates a joint venture with a builder, and then you're the preferred lender, right? Like that you get special quotes if they use you. You get additional credits if they use you. So I was seeing that the builder loan officers were like 4, 5, 6 million a month. And then all of us over here that we were picking up Realtor Zillow leads, we were like $1 million, 2, 3, 5, right? But it was very inconsistent. And so I was like, man, I want to get there. So I asked, and they were like, well, if you want to do that, you have to downgrade to a processor for like 6 months. And learn like the back of the house operations, because it's going to make you a better loan officer. And I'm like, all right. So Camila and I again decided that we would do that. And so I downgraded from a licensed loan officer to a back of the house processor on an hourly, right? Like I went from full commission to hourly with little bonuses. And so I was like, long-term mentality, right? I was like, it's just the education, just like, day in and day out going through it. Sure. So that lasted about 6 months. And then I got the call for the builder desk. And that's really where my career as a loan officer really took off. So that year, that half year, for the rest of the year, I think I made maybe like I made like $7,000 a month or so, which was only half the year. But then my last year as a loan officer, which was 2021, I ended up the year with $48 million in production and over 180 loans. So that was my best year, right? Yeah. So I typically don't go into this much detail, but I wanted to mention that because if I just say like, oh, my best year as a loan officer, I did it for 3 years. I did 48 million in production. Like you missed the entire part where,
for sure,
like,
where it was
I didn't
hard.
make money. I took like a downgraded, a pay cut. And then I went back into it, ramping up again, right? Like, and I think all that matters, right?
That's the Instagram version of the story, right? You only get to see what happens on year 3. Everybody posts about all the crazy things and the cool things they get to do now, but you miss the whole origin story. And the origin story is where everything's cool. Like it's cool to be in a spot where, you have all the money, you have all the things, but honestly, for me, the buildup, the journey to get there was. Because once you get to that point, once you achieve the goals, once you see it through, it's like, okay, well, now what? But the whole journey of getting there is where it's at, right? I mean, that's where we learn, that's where we grow, and that's where we can take every lesson that we learn and realize that, hey, when I have a decision like this again, I already know how to deal with that one. So give me harder and harder decisions that I have to deal with. So that's cool, man. Yeah. And go ahead. I was going to say, so we like to do a segment where it's called Pivot Point. And that was kind of your pivot point. So you're now in this spot with your lending where you're top of the world, right? 180 closed loans in a year. And then you magically decide, well, shoot, now I want to go do something else. Like, how do you just got to the pinnacle of it and now you're going to go do something else? What was your fiance's thought rolling through her head of, hey, I want to go do something else, honey?
Well, you beat me to it. That was exactly what I was going to mention. So I proudly have this accolade that I left February of 2022 when rates were still at the 3s and the 2s.
Yep.
I decided to quit my job when the rates were still really, really good. And I was on track for my best year even yet. Right.
Yep.
So this happened because going back to when I decided to become a loan officer, Camille has a real estate license, by the way. So I kind of at the same time where I decided to go loan officer, she decided to go the realtor route. But she also, went through her journey of education and everything. But when we both got our licenses, we made a promise to each other that we were never going to park. Right. We were like, we're both on the same page that no matter what happens, no matter if, we're making 200, 300, 400, 500, whatever that is, like we're not going to park and we're not going to settle, right? Because this is not the goal. The goal is not to become a high earner and a full commission. That's not the goal, right? And so February of 2022 comes rolling around. At this point, I've missed birthdays. I've missed holidays. I've been late to holiday parties, right? Everybody had dinner and I'm the last one to show up. Those are all the things that people don't typically talk about, right? And the high paying full commission jobs, I had one weekend off a month, right? Like 2 days a month off. The rest I was just on the phones Monday through Sunday, right? Every day, all the time. And so we made the decision that we were going to just go full-time real estate investing. We were like, hey, we learned a little bit, right? And kind of that was the purpose also to learn a little bit about what the industry was like, which hindsight, I didn't learn anything about being a real estate investor. I just learned conventional programs, things like that. And of course, some education does translate, especially with title, right? Transactional stuff. Like I know all these documents like the back of my hand, how to read a HUD, how all that stuff. So, there's some education that did translate, but not when you're talking about sub twos or under finance or, none of that stuff, right? Like zero.
No.
So with her support, we had a little bit of money in the bank and we decided to pivot. We decided to go ahead and just pull the plug and go full-time real estate investors. And so check this out. This is, I'm not going to say any names, but it's a really, really cool story. Okay. So the day that I decided to put in my notice, it was February 15th, I think. I have the date written down, but it was February 15th of 2022. And I, at this point, had developed great relationships, or so I thought, with higher levels, higher execs, management, right? Because, I'm making you guys a lot of money. So normally they take notice on your production and on you, and there's a personal relationship that gets built naturally, right? And so the moment that I put in my notice, I started getting calls, right? Like first, manager, things like that. And then a really high level executive of the company calls me, and we could never get in touch with one another because I was still working, busy, trying to figure things out. So I put in a 30-day notice, right? Like not 2 weeks, not a week, or saying I'm done, 30 days, right? Because I was like, dude, I want to do them right. They did me right in my family, so I want to do this right. And I get just the most absurd of emails ever, like discouraging and disheartening and just telling me that, you're going to fail and, you don't know what you're doing. And, and more offensive stuff as well that I'm not going to say right here. But I was just really heartbroken. I was disappointed, and Camille was livid too, right? Like we poured literally years of our life into developing this career. And we were expecting like a supportive kind of response, right? Like, you guys go get it. Like, the American dream, right? Like, go get it. And it was the total opposite. And so that was a massive, like, just wake up call for us of like, dude, nobody cares, right? Like nobody cares about your dreams as much as you do. Nobody cares about what you're doing as much as you do. So you might as well do it anyways.
They see it as an inconvenience to them, right? Like now you're inconveniencing them. But I mean, was there ever a point where the script kind of flipped and you go, you know what, this 100% solidifies my decision. If they're going to treat me like this, did they actually really care about anything that I've done this entire time? Or
that's exactly what happened.
If I'm a producer, okay, cool. So it solidified that decision for you guys and kind of gave you that drive.
All of the rapport, right, that you built throughout the years of, grinding together how did you call it? Gyrating through the holidays, and everything. And you feel like there's this unity in your team, right? Because it's the culture that they build. It's just gone, right? Like one instant to the next, absolutely gone. And so you're like, okay, wow. So all this time I've just been really, a cash producing machine for you. That's pretty much it. That's it, right?
Yep. You're a number.
You just, and I really didn't believe that, right? Like I've heard it in podcasts and bigger pockets. I've heard it in books, right? Like I've heard it and I've never really believed it, right? Like I was like, no, this company's different. They really care about me, right? Like my family. And it was a shocking realization, to be honest.
I hear you.
Yeah. Did something similar happen to you?
Oh, dude. Almost the same thing. Like as far as when I quit, the reason that I quit was a little different, but I was working for that sales job and I was the youngest employee or youngest salesperson in the entire company. I was like 21 years old, 22 years old selling for a Fortune 500 company. I got a link up to get this job from one of my mentor at the time. He was really high up in the company. So he got me an interview, crushed the interview and then started for him. But I'm selling. I'm like top producer in my role month after month after month. And my boss is just livid. And I'm like, what are you mad about? She goes, you see all these tests right here? Like what we would do is we sold laboratory tests. So like when you go get your blood drawn, they take your hemoglobin, they run your white blood cell count. They do all those tests on your blood. So we would sell those tests, but there were specific tests that us and our one competitor, we would each buy, the companies were each purchasing smaller specialty labs that were like the best in the business at these specific tests. So I would tell the doctors when I would go into the office and try to sell them these tests, I'm like, hey guys, all of these tests are commoditized. It's the same testing. We both run the same stuff. We're really good at these tests, like this specific couple number of tests. The competitor, on the other hand, is really good at these tests. So don't use us for these. So I would get all of the commoditized business and I would get our specialty tests, which the commoditized business is so much like that's the bulk of everything. But my boss and my boss's boss hated the fact that I wasn't trying to pitch everything. And I was like, guys, the reason I have trust with these people, with these doctors' offices, is because I'm not trying to tell them that we're the best in everything. So at that point, I was like, you know what, this is really not for me. Had a falling out with my boss. I was a kid back then, got into a screaming match in the office in front of the entire company. It was bad. and so I left and started learning real estate on the side. But yeah, man, it gets you to realize that you can do so much for these companies. You can do so much as an employee, but at the end of the day, you are truly just a number.
Dude, 100%, man. I mean, it's, I'm sorry you had that experience too. Like it's interesting.
I'm glad I had that experience.
That's right. It served you, but Alex Hormozy talks about this and it like also the Blue Ocean Strategy book, right? Like figure out that 1-2 things that you're really good at and then just become the best at that. And you had that mentality, right? Like, dude, I'm not going to go compete. Like instead I'm creating, right? Because I know I'm the best here and it's easy to sell. Like why make it hard to, compete with this other company that we have no business competing with, so.
Agreed. All right. Well then let's piggyback off of that. What are those things that you're really good at that you focus on? And that you've continued to develop over the years?
I think I'm really good in my closing. So appointments, closing ratios, things like that. I think I'm really good at just building relationships, and because, I think a lot of the times people get caught with all the gurus online, right? Like, I have the best script in the world. Let me show you what this, like
$10,000 for my script.
Yeah, like 10-minute one call close, 100K wholesale, like done, easy, right? It's just like,
that's not how it works.
Just shut up, bro.
None of this is real.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I actually, I developed different programs in my company, so to tailor to specific needs. And so when I'm talking to a seller, I share with them that, I'm gonna tailor our offer to whatever their situation is and whatever, and make it a win for them. And then if it's a win for me as well, then that's great. Yeah. So I've taken the REI Sales Academy course. I continue to educate myself every single day. I read, so I really enjoy the relationship aspect of our business.
Yeah.
But what I'm bad at, that I'm actively working on, is the lead generation and pipeline management, right? Like lead follow-up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just don't particularly enjoy that.
Well, yeah, because we'd rather be out there talking face-to-face with people instead of dealing with the KPIs and the metrics and getting all that stuff in place. But you have to have those things, right?
You have to. Absolutely. 100%.
So how are you getting better at those things? Are there resources that you're using to educate yourself, or what's your typical protocol look like? If you have something that you're trying to work on, how do you kind of attack that?
So, yeah, I mean, it's exactly the way that you're saying it. I'm reverse engineering all my KPIs. So I do have all of my KPIs in my CRM, and I also put them in my Google Sheet. So every month I do a recap of my month. And so I take a look at my percentages of gross leads to net leads, and I can expand on those terminologies if we want. But
for starters, KPIs, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, key performance indicators. Most businesses have key performance indicators that they track to see see how well their business is doing, to see stuff like that. So key performance indicators, keep going.
Yep. It's like I like to think about them like levers, right? Like, what lever can you pull to create a certain outcome? So if you want to get more deals, just make more offers. Well, in order to make more offers, I need more leads or qualified leads, right? So, and then you just can reverse engineer that whole process.
Yep.
And so, for example, a gross lead for me is any lead that comes into your system that you paid for, right? Okay. Regardless if it's a qualified lead or not. A net lead is a qualified lead, meaning they're ready, willing, and able. They are the person that can sell. They do want to sell, and they're able to sell legally, right? Like, it's not in a trust where they need to bring in their 60 brothers. Those
are the fun ones, though. They have the most meat.
Yeah, that's true. So those are how I categorize gross leads, net leads. And then from there, I go into appointments, right? Mm-hmm. Appointments, offers made, contracts signed, and then contracts closed. So those are my primary KPIs that I'm tracking. And I do track them by campaign as well, because, when you have different marketing channels, you just want to see how each marketing channel is performing individually. So I built, this whole reports, dashboards in my CRM. So I use Salesforce, I use LeftMain. Gotcha. So that's helped me really just get clarity on my business so that I can make the best decisions.
You almost have to have those things, right? Like, how can you diagnose the health of your business if you have no idea where you're at? You can't make adjustments. You can't do anything until you have these things in place, which is something that I think a lot of us, being an Investor Fuel, our mastermind, I think that's something that they hammer into our heads, is you got to have these numbers in place. Because if you're struggling, how am I supposed to help you if I don't even know where you're at? Like, you can't even tell me where you're at because you don't have the numbers in place.
100%. Well, actually, let me give the listeners an idea of the power of this, right?
Yeah.
So May of this year, I started my own company. Before that, I was my business partner. So that lasted for close to about a year. And then we both decided it was best for us to go separate ways. So in May of this year, when I started my company, in the first 90 days, I did a little over $110,000 in actual revenue produced for the company.
Wow. Good for you.
And it was just me. Yeah. But the reason why I say that the KPIs are important is the only reason why I was able to do that is because I knew my KPIs, right? Like, I knew that if I had a certain amount of leads in my pipeline and I was making a certain amount of offers, I was going to get a certain amount of contracts, right? And so it removes all of this guessing game, right? All of the insecurities of, am I good enough? Do I, do I have the right list, or do I have the right, like all of those things are law of averages, right? Like you could be the worst salesman in the world, but if you're playing the law of averages, you will still close deals, right?
Yep.
Unless you're offensive, and you're mean, right?
well, you're going to have a lot more issues at that point anyway. Yeah. So you're basically taking the things that are nebulous and putting quantifiable data to it. So
100%.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, hell, I've even started to do that in my personal life. Like I have a daily tracker of how my days went.
I do now too. Yeah.
And I can see at the end of the year, hey, listen, from day 1 of 2024 to day 365 of 2024, how did I do? And then I can improve on it. I can take a look at it, snapshot of it quarterly, improve on the things that I want to improve on, and then keep going from there. So I think that's a huge piece of not only business life, but everyday life, is knowing where you're at, because there's too many times in our lives and too many people that just kind of walk through life and they really don't have any idea of what direction they're going or anything 100%. Like that. So to be elite, like the podcast, you have to know where these things are at, right?
100%. And see, what's interesting about my business now is the past 6 months, we've done well, but we found ourselves kind of again in the same cycle almost. It felt like of commissions, right? Like when I was a loan officer, like, dude, I mean, every month is a reset, right? Every single month is a reset. Like there's no, like we're not really building anything here. So now our business model is pivoting more to buy and holds, acquiring real estate through creative methods such as subject to, doing owner finance like wraps, keeping some rentals. And so, now my focus has shifted into, wait, why am I doing this again? Hang on. Like, I don't, because I feel like a lot of wholesalers that start wholesaling, you do well, you get, you do 10, 15, 20K a month and you start making some money, you upgrade your life, right? And then now you need to upgrade your business as well. And so, and then it becomes this like thing
pseudo
where like,
rat race.
Yeah, dude, literally,
you're back in the rat race.
100%. You're literally, I wrote that in my journal today, get out of the rat race, and people might think that, we are like, dude, I want to be, full-time real estate investor. Like it's probably the best thing ever. I will say, obviously the lifestyle is very cool, right? Because I can travel, I can close. So that part is just, it's awesome, but it's not like, I'm not closer to my long-term financial freedom goals than when I literally took the job as a loan officer, right? Like I haven't made any progress there. And, so that's the pivot that we're going through right now.
And Kenny, you're, how old are you?
I'm 29.
Okay. So I'm about to turn 29. I just got engaged too. So we're very similar stages in life. We're very similar stages of life. And I feel,
you have a date?
I feel that. Do I have a date? No.
Yeah.
No, we'll probably elope and then just we'll just have a ceremony somewhere overseas at some point. But we've got so many things and events. Are you really?
May in France. Yeah.
In France. I have been there one time, but was there for like 6 hours, so I didn't see much of it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll share more details with you later.
We can talk at fuel. But I think that's something that there's a couple pieces to unpack here. One is we are almost 30 and we don't have all of our shit figured out, right? Like,
nope.
I think that there's too much that gets hammered online of, look at all these people that do all these really cool things on Instagram. They're real estate investors. They have all this money. No, we're still trying to figure things out. Yeah, we do get that freedom. We do get all of those things. But just like you said, I still have to wake up. I still have to go. Well, I still have to wake up, obviously, but I still have to wake up and go to work every day because we haven't built our business to a point where it's like, we have $100,000 in passive revenue that comes in every month. We don't, that's right. It's not passive. We still have to work for that. We still have to find the leads. We still have to go get the deals. And I think that's what we all are striving towards in this business. And that's one of the reasons, I don't know if we've talked about this, but that's one of the reasons that we recently started buying businesses, because we're just now acquiring cash flowing assets that kick off cash flow every month. And we really don't have to do much with it. But It's the same idea with buying as much real estate as possible and kind of delaying that gratification on a lot of these things, because we get these massive checks, right? Like we get massive checks that we could easily just go, you know what? I want a brand new car. But that's not going to move the needle for us. We have to kind of
you get the house, right?
Exactly.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Go on some crazy wild trip, which is fun. But again, you still have to now go back and generate that money again. And It's not easy. So tell me a little bit about, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say it's not easy, right? Like every month you have to look at your KPIs. You have to make the financial commitments, right, towards your marketing. And then, the bigger you grow, it comes with additional problems, right? Like as you develop a team, now you're thinking about culture and values and mission and vision and it really transforms. And so this year, we're trying to be super intentional about what we're building, right? Like we're no longer just trying to get blinded by the dollar signs and then, end up 40 years old with a $5 million, a year wholesaling business, but be like, dude, but we have no assets.
Yeah. What do we do with this?
Yeah. If I get hit by a car tomorrow, like my family is unprotected, right?
Exactly.
So that's really what we're trying to build right now. Cause and I think it's also human nature, right? Like we all burn out at some point stage, right? I'm not anywhere near the burnout point, but I don't want to get there, right? Like I had that happen in my loan officer stuff. And I know that the main reason now that you feel those feelings of like, gosh, why am I doing this? Is because you're not in line with your blueprint, right? Like you feel like you're not working or your life is developing to that point where you want it to be. And that's the mission. That's the goal. It's like, all right, well, we're starting to get more into development. So we're going to buy some land, develop an industrial park, and at the same time, buy some single family for rentals. But again, now we've pivoted completely from, hey, let me make 10, 15, 20 a pop per wholesale and, feel good about myself for a day. Right. And then
I got to go do it again.
And then do it again.
Next month's bills are still going to hit and I got to go spend X number of dollars again on marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude. Well, cool. We're getting close to the end. And when we get close to the end, I like to go through our rapid reaction questions. So
let's do it.
I'm basically going to give you some unconventional scenarios, hypothetical business dilemmas, and
I like it.
Just whatever pops off the top of your head. So first one is my favorite question I like to ask. So first one is, if you could have one business related superpower, like instant market prediction, some unbeatable negotiation skills, what would that look like? And what would that superpower be that you'd want to have?
I'm going to give you, like you said, the first thing that came to my mind was the ability to have unlimited capital raising abilities.
See, I love that. That's something that we all need, right? That would help with the developments. That would help with everything if we had the ability to just, I can do so much right now with unlimited capital.
Yeah, because I don't need, and that's the other thing I've learned, right? I don't have to be the best at everything, right? No. Like, and everybody that is playing at the multifamily level, commercial level, everybody's struggling with capital. So if you have capital and you want to get into real estate, I promise that you're going to make some best friends really quickly.
I'll show you where to put it. Hand me a couple $1 million. I know I can put it somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
Man, our lender just left our office. I know what he made last year, and he lives a healthy life. Cool.
There you go.
All right. So question 2. If you could get business advice from any historical figure, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Ooh. Oh, that's good. Hang on, I haven't thought about that one. Probably the Rockefellers. Ooh, actually,
that was my answer too.
Okay, so Camille right now is reading the Medici book, and it's basically like a historical story of the Medici family.
Yep.
So I would say it's going to be between those two. I mean, I'm going to change my answer. I'm going to say the Medicis.
I think you probably learn a lot about like business dynamics on a massive global scale from stuff like them, because they controlled a lot of things, didn't they?
They did, but they also started from nothing, like
Yeah.
nothing. And it became a family generational business. And so like understanding, like, cause that's a big thing, right? The short sleeve, long sleeve, parable, it's a very real thing. And so it's like, how do you keep motivated generations motivated to, keep working at a high level and
for sure.
Doing business the right way too, which is really cool. Their story is just insane, but
I love that. Yeah. It's a great answer. All right. One more. So this one's kind of fun. If you could start a completely different business tomorrow and you had unlimited capital to start whatever type of business that you want to do, this is like your fun business. You can go do whatever the heck you want. It doesn't need to make money. It doesn't need to do any of that, right? What would it be?
I've dreamed about redefining the architectural landscape in the United States a lot.
Really? Explain that. What does that mean?
So before, we used to build for, actually, let me back it up. So if you really look at current modern architecture in the United States, you can't see the future. No, you can't see the past.
Okay.
Right. Most homes, the way that we build them nowadays, are nice enough to just kind of be like, it's good for now. Yep. Right. But there's no character in most of these homes, right? You need to buy a home that's luxury. There's no characters. But when you go to the old world, meaning in Europe or, any part of the old world, quotations, every single home, every single building has character. Right.
It's distinct, you're right.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, what changed? Right. It was, well, we're all building for efficiency now, right? We're all building these wide boxes that are primarily, the focus is optimize the space and optimize efficiencies, right? So that you don't spend as much
as fast as you can
and build them as fast as you can. So I think that I hope that AI brings back the human skill that only humans can create, which I think is creativity, and especially in all the arts. And I consider architecture a form of art, to be honest.
I think I would agree.
Because, when you walk in, if you've been to Europe and you walk in the cities, you feel different, right?
Oh, each city you go to, it's a completely different experience.
Right. And you can see some of that, right, in the United States and like the East Coast, right? But what happened in the rest of the country, right?
They built homes as fast as they could.
Right. Build homes as fast as they could. Yep. There's no third spaces typically, right? Like there's no parks, right? If you live in a neighborhood and you have a park, it's probably just grass and a swing set.
Let's pack as many people into the tightest space as we possibly can. Yeah.
And I think that there's a couple of movements happening. One's called I think it's called like urbanism. I can't remember. But there's a couple of architects that are actively creating spaces where on a walking distance, you can go to school, you can go to your grocery store, you can go to church, you can go to that third space that we all need to congregate as a community and meet your neighbors. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I've dreamt of a lot of, because I want to be able to feel that we are doing something that future generations are going to appreciate.
Yeah, and it's like it's building community around something like that too, right? I mean, when you go to these places and you can see those kinds of things, you can have discussions about it. You can talk about you can build a community around like the ideas that were behind it. So I think that's cool. I've always wanted to go to Japan because I love the whole architecture of Japan. And how all of that stuff. I had a mentor a while back. He passed, but he had built this house in Kansas City from ground up that was Japanese architecture. So all the peak lines. Yeah, he had his entire backyard was a koi pond. Like his entire backyard was insane. So I've always wanted to go see Japan after that. But yeah, dude. Well, this has been great. Thanks for hanging with us today. We'll get this. I'll get you all the details of when we're getting everything out. But thanks so much for giving us your perspective and for hanging with us and providing so much value to the people that are listening to this. Absolutely. Well, and I hope that, there's some good stuff in there that they liked.
And yeah, I mean, if you guys, I'm always open to connecting with people. So if anybody wants to find me, Kenny J Garza is my handle in all social media. So Twitter or X, Instagram, Facebook. So you can find me there. And yeah, we can just chat and connect. I don't sell anything. So just free value.
He's a salesman that doesn't sell anything. I love it. I was going to get there, but you beat me to it. So cool. We'll leave all the links in the show notes. And until next time, have a good one, everybody.
All righty. Bye, guys.